There is an ancient Arabic proverb that says, "People are like mines of gold and silver. Those who were the best of them in the days of ignorance will be the best of them in Islam, if they deeply understand." Today, we are going to open the gateway of time, cross the vast, scorching desert, and step back into 7th century Makkah. We are not just analyzing a television show. We are immersing ourselves in living history through episode 2 of the monumental series, Umar bin Khattab. It is in this very episode that we witness how destiny began to weave the life of a young man who would one day shatter the mighty Persian and Roman empires. But before he became known as Al-Faruq, the one who distinguishes truth from falsehood, he was merely a youth whose soul was forged by the jagged rocks of Makkah and the merciless whip of his own father. The screen opens with a view that makes your throat feel dry just by looking at it. The Valley of Dahnut, a place where mirages dance over the burning sands. We see a tall, heavily built young man with broad shoulders and a firm, commanding stride. This is the young Umar, but in his eyes at that time, there was no light of faith. There was only deep exhaustion and a fierce, survivalist alertness. Nearby stands Khattab bin Nufail, his father. In the annals of history, Khattab was known as a harsh, rigid, and uncompromising man. The camera beautifully captures the psychological tension between this father and son. To Khattab, the camels were the pride and honor of the Bani Adi clan. If Umar made even the slightest mistake in herding or watering them, the heavy, hot air of Dahnut would be pierced by the sharp sound of a whip. The whip lands heavily on Umar's back. We see the actor Samar Ismail projecting that intense pain, not through tears, but through a clenched jaw and a gaze that pierces the earth beneath him. This brutal upbringing left a permanent scar on Umar's soul. Decades later, when he was Amir al-Mu'minin, the ruler of the vast Islamic state, he returned to this very valley with his companions. Tears streaming down his face, he remarked, "I used to herd camels here for Khattab. He was incredibly harsh. If I worked, he exhausted me. If I lagged behind, he beat me. And today, I find myself in a time where there is no one between me and Allah." Through this opening act, the director wants us to realize Umar was not born gentle. He was conditioned by his environment to be thick-skinned, hard-hearted, and utterly fearless of men. However, Umar was no ignorant desert boy. The camera then transitions from the barren valley to the bustling, loud heartbeat of Makkah's civilization, the market of UKS, and the courtyard of the Kaaba. Here, Umar grew into one of the most prominent young men among the Quraysh. Umar possessed extraordinary physical traits. Historical records state that when Umar stood in a crowd, he looked as if he were riding a horse because of his towering height. At the UK's market, where Arab warriors gathered to test their strength, Umar was the ultimate gladiator. The wrestling scenes in this episode are portrayed with raw masculinity. Umar slams his opponents one by one into the dusty ground of Makkah. Every time he triumphs, the cheers of his clan echo through the valley. Yet, Umar's brilliance did not end with physical muscle. This episode showcases a side of Umar that was rare among the Quraysh youth of his time. He could read and write. He was a natural diplomat. Whenever different tribes found themselves in conflict, Umar of the Bani Adi was chosen as the mediator or ambassador. He was highly intelligent, a master orator, and possessed a razor-sharp logic. But at this point in his life, Umar's intellect was still trapped within the cage of Jahiliyyah, the age of ignorance. We watch scenes where Umar stands before the Kaaba, gazing at stone idols like Hubal, Lata, and Uzza with absolute devotion. To Umar, these idols were not just statues. They were the very symbols of Arab unity, the financial foundation of Makkah, and the sacred heritage of his forefathers that had to be protected with blood. This is the psychological tragedy of Umar in episode 2. He genuinely believed he was defending the truth. He thought that protecting the old traditions was the only way to save Makkah from collapse. His uncompromising nature meant that anyone threatening the social order of Makkah would answer directly to his sword. Umar was the front shield of Quraysh arrogance. As the sun sets behind the rocky hills of Makkah, the atmosphere of the episode shifts into something quiet, mysterious, yet deeply intense. The background music changes to a soul-stirring instrumental melody. The camera moves away from the lavish gatherings of the Quraysh elite and takes us to a secluded, humble house at the foot of Mount Shafa, the house of Arqam bin Abil. Here, under the absolute cover of night, the dawn of Islam was quietly rising. In secret, the Umar Series, the man whom they had known for 40 years as Alami, the trustworthy Muhammad bin Abdullah, had received divine revelation. The director of the series masterfully captures the atmosphere inside Darul Arqam. We see a small group of human beings whose faces are illuminated by a single candle flickering in the wind. There is Abu Bakr Ashadiq sitting with a gaze full of warmth and serenity. There is a young Ali bin Abi Thalib, his heart filled with bravery. And most emotionally moving for the audience is the presence of the slaves and the weak of Makkah, like Bilal bin Rabah and Amr bin Yasir. Inside that cramped room, they listen to the holy verses of the Quran being recited in low, beautiful whispers. Every verse felt like cool water poured over hearts made barren by the injustices of Jahiliyyah. The Quran spoke of human equality, teaching that there is no difference between a Quraysh nobleman and an Abyssinian slave, except in their piety. The contrast presented in episode 2 is magical. Outside, Umar bin Khattab and the leaders of Quraysh are drinking wine, boasting of their physical dominance and plotting their commercial future. Meanwhile, inside Darul Arqam, a group of oppressed individuals is laying the foundations of a new civilization that would alter the course of human history forever. These two worlds existed in the very same city, yet they were separated by an immeasurable canyon of faith. However, a movement in the dark cannot remain hidden forever. In the second half of episode 2, the tension moves directly into the council chamber of Makkah's rulers, Darun Nadwa. News that Muhammad was spreading a new message that openly condemned their ancestral idols had finally leaked out. We are given a highly intense scene where Abu Jahl Amr bin Hisham stands up, his eyes burning with absolute fury. To Abu Jahl, Islam was a direct declaration of war against his social status. If all human beings are equal before Muhammad's God, then where does his nobility as a leader of Quraysh stand? Beside him, Abu Sufyan watches with a cold, analytical mind. As a brilliant businessman, he viewed Islam as a threat to the stability of Makkah's trade routes. If trading caravans from neighboring lands saw Makkah fractured by a new religion, their economy would bleed to death. In the corner of Darun Nadwa, Umar bin Khattab sits and listens. His face is tense. As a diplomat and a guardian of unity, Umar feels his chest tightening with anger. To him, Muhammad, a man they had deeply loved before, it was now viewed as someone pulling tribes apart, separating sons from fathers, and destroying the sanctity of Makkah. Umar did not look at Islam through a theological lens at that time. He saw it as a political rebellion that needed to be crushed before it was too late. Umar's hand begins to tighten around the hilt of his sword. The audience is presented with an incredible irony. The man who would one day become the strongest pillar of Islam, at this very moment, was preparing himself to become the most lethal enemy to the Prophet's mission. Yet, this is where the sheer genius of the script shines. The director does not portray Umar as a mindless, bloodthirsty monster. By the end of episode 2, we begin to see the first ripples of conflict within Umar's otherwise unshakable soul. Umar was a man who loved truth and valued structural logic. When he witnesses how the early Muslims endure brutal torture, how a slave like Bilal, or an elderly woman like Sumaya, stands firm against agony with a serene smile on their faces, Umar begins to feel a profound sense of confusion. His sharp intellect begins to whisper questions. What is this power? Why are they not afraid of our swords and our whips? What exactly has Muhammad offered them that makes these people willing to lose everything? Umar begins to realize that Islam is not a temporary madness. It is something that has taken root deep within the souls of its followers. Episode 2 closes with a deeply poetic and reflective scene. Umar bin Khattab walks completely alone under the quiet night sky of Makkah. He stands near the dark Kaaba. The desert night wind rustles his cloak. He stares at the stone statues surrounding him, But this time, his gaze is different. A shadow of doubt has begun to slip through the cracks of his absolute certainty. This is the end of a dawn blocked by the heavy mist of Makkah, an epic that shows that Allah's guidance does not always come like a calm river. It often arrives through a massive internal storm within the hardest of human hearts. My friends, the story of episode 2 teaches us that no matter how hard a person's heart may seem, if Allah has decreed a great destiny for them, then their initial resistance is merely Allah's way of making their eventual journey toward the light all the more beautiful. Thank you for staying tuned through this deep, 30-minute historical storytelling experience. If you want us to continue this epic journey into episode 3, where we will see the beginning of brutal physical persecution, and how Umar's heart is shaken even further, please hit that like button right now. Share your thoughts in the comments section about which scene touched your heart the most in episode 2, and most importantly, don't forget to click subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you will be the first to know when episode 3 drops. This is Motion X Stories, signing off. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.